Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you happen to be today. Thank you for joining the 88th Fireside Chat. We appreciate your presence here and we're looking forward to your questions. Armand, why don't you go ahead and start?
Sure. So my question is about low entropy, utopia, kind of like where we're going with our society and as individuals in the society. So my question is, are there other reality frames that are aware of the bigger picture and that have supportive elements in the culture of that particular PMR as a whole? Kind of like groups or institutions that support the evolution of consciousness in individuals. Um, in a way, I think we try to have this kind of systems here, but in general, it's a lack of understanding of the bigger picture and a lot of low quality choices that hinders the systems to blossom in our society. So my question is about that.
Your question is, are there other reality frames that do it better, that have progressed to utopia kind of society? I have not been in one like that. All the ones I've been in, the entities there are struggling much as we are struggling. Some are a little further along, perhaps some are further behind. More tend to be further behind than further ahead. We're not at the end of the evolutionary game, but I've not been to a reality that I would call physical, a real tight rule set reality, where the average quality of consciousness was very high. So it may exist, or that I just haven't been there, or it just doesn't exist yet. But it's certainly possible, and it's where we're going. And I have absolutely zero doubt that we will get there, because evolution, though slow, is relentless, and it will manage to get there eventually. The big question is that going to be in the next, century, or is it going to be 3 millennia from now? We don't know that. Now, this is a very difficult game we're in. This changing yourself to be somebody else who has less fear. That is not a simple thing to do, as most of you know, who have come to terms with your fears and realize that to overcome a fear and change who you are, it takes some time. It's not easy. And when everything around you is full of fear, it makes it even more difficult, which is why the evolution starts out very, very slow. But it does accelerate. The more of us that evolve to lower entropy, then the easier it is for all of us to evolve. It gets easier and easier. So that it's like the more you learn, the easier it is to learn more. The bigger your picture is, the easier it is to expand that bigger picture. But when you're stuck in the beginning with that tiny little picture and there's nothing in it really but you, and you're extremely self-centered, it's very hard from there, to just grow up. So it's a slow thing, and it's a pulling ourselves up our bootstraps, which means we all kind of have to do it together before our culture, before our species is a low entropy species. But I think the process is speeding up. And I believe we have an opportunity now to speed it up even faster than it's ever been before. Whether we'll grasp that opportunity or waste it is hard to say. But at least we have the opportunity that we haven't had before. So I'm very positive about it. But no, I haven't run into other systems that were like us, large, billions of people, this kind of a system that that was really much better off than we were. I've run into smaller systems, much smaller subsets that were better off than we are. but they didn't have the tight rule set. It was a different kind of base. It's not like this. When you're in this tight rule set, it's survival is a problem. And dealing with other entities who are high entropy and the damage that they can do, and to have to grow up in that system is a lot harder than growing up, say, in a system that doesn't have a tight rule set. That's a lot easier space to be in. So does that answer your question, Armand?
Yes, it does. I was just also wondering if maybe the system wants it to be more difficult, that the higher quality of consciousnesses shouldn't be too many, perhaps, to mix it up, like a game plan, or is it just leaving it to the chance?
I think the system would like us to evolve as quickly as we can. I don't think the system plans in any difficulty for us. All the difficulty is created by ourselves. So you just can't start at the top. You have to earn, you have to grow, you have to become. So you start at the very bottom, which is very high entropy. When you're very high entropy, it's a very slow process of outgrowing that. So it's that, and I think that it just can't happen any quicker than than what we're doing, which means it it just depends that we all have to grow up a little bit, and then we have a nicer society, which will help us all grow up a little bit more. But right now, we still are in large part controlled power force. Is the way we interact with each other. How much power, how much control you have is what really matters in the world today. Or if you don't have much power, much ability to make things come out the way you want, then you tend to be at the bottom of the barrel. So control power force is still the the dominant ethic, the dominant unethical system. So that's changing now. It's not nearly as bad as it was, but it's just a long, slow thing. So no, I don't think the system has done anything to slow it down. We IUSCs have to do it for ourselves, and it's a difficult thing to do when you're surrounded by control power force. And you have to grow up and become love in that environment is a hard thing. So that's why it's pulling yourselves up by our bootstraps. We all have to kind of do it together to get there.
Tom, I had a little bit of a thought on this question that Armand submitted. Um, you've often said diversity is needed for growth. If this aspect of your theory is more widely understood, would there be less entropy, less fears, if they understood that the nature of reality is this diversity of experience, and also that they are going to be experiencing their life as other entities, and that free will awareness mix that you always talk about?
Well, yes and no. Would it help people grow up better if they understood? Well, yes, if people had bigger pictures and they understood the nature of reality, then that would help them grow up. I mean, that's the whole point of MBT, to help people understand and have bigger pictures so that they can make better choices. So, in that sense, yes, that helps. On the other hand, giving somebody some information that they could use doesn't mean they will use it. You can make these ideas available, and even the people who are attracted to them, even the people who bother to read and to get involved and and see the model of reality, see bigger pictures, it's still difficult for them to take that intellectual understanding and turn it into lower entropy of consciousness. So even if you've got the idea intellectually, that doesn't mean you've got the idea where where it matters, which is the being level, that you're a different person. Again, that's the difference between acting and being. If we all act kind, that's nicer, makes it a nicer place to live, but that doesn't help you evolve as much as actually being kind. But it's usually the first step. Getting it into the intellect is usually step one before it can sink down at deeper levels. So, yes, if people understood bigger pictures, that would be their step one. That raises the probability that they will eventually get it down at their being level. But it's not a certainty. It just raises the probability some.
You also mentioned fears, and fears are the kinds of conflicts that we're seeing between gender and race and different things like that. If it was also understood that your theory of reincarnation um, is brought about to have people experience being those things that they're afraid of, and that I think would lead to a bigger picture. Would you say?
Well, sure. But again, Donna, it may lead to a bigger intellectual picture, but it doesn't necessarily lead to being level understanding. So yes, it would help them start the process at least toward maybe growing up.
It's more of a long haul, is it? You had a
Mhm.
second question, Armand. Do you want to go ahead with that one?
Sure, absolutely. It's more personal, but I hope we can uh, help others too if they have similar experiences. Well, I worked with a MBT friend who is very clairvoyant and intuitive, and she told me that my grandfather looked at me when I was in the baby crib as a baby, and I just, like a flash, I saw that image, and I got a very strong physical sensation. So I think perhaps it truly happened then when I was a baby, but I'm not sure. Maybe the information just was put in my consciousness and hers at the moment. So uh, I, I think I get a lot of nudges in my life, but they are so subtle. And when I have a breakthrough experience in an out of body state, it seems so concrete, and the information is almost not questionable. So I'm just wondering, is it because of the PMR rule set that makes it so subtle and almost like mysterious, and you can't know for sure because there could be other explanations? Um, so my question is related to those things, like the paranormal experiences.
Well, when you have an out of body experience, then what you're experiencing is your environment or an environment. Right? You go places, you see things, you interact with other beings. It's an interactive thing. That doesn't challenge your fear nearly as much as you trying to dig deeper into your mind and into your experience and you know what's important to you. It's not as personal as you know, dealing with information about your grandfather or the relationships that you may have had or those kinds of things are a lot more personal. So they become a lot harder to deal with because that's where your fears are. You're not sure. And for the most part, that kind of information, whether your grandfather looked at you or did any particular thing with you or whatever, is really not that important. That as a fact, is that a fact or not a fact, isn't really important. That isn't going to help you grow much, whether that's a fact or not a fact. It might be interesting, it might explain things, but that's just you trying to build a model, build a structure on which to hang your, your experiences and to help understand them.
Yeah, sorry, it was more like it was my grandfather was dead, so it was the thing that he was standing there, but he has passed before, so it was
Okay.
more.
Yeah, that may, it may be, but whether that happened or not doesn't really affect your choices. Your ability to make a choice doesn't really matter about that. So let's say you have a conversation with a dead grandfather and he tells you things. Well, whether that was really your grandfather or not, the only difference is the information you get useful? Now that's important. Whether that was your grandfather or an image of your grandfather or the LCS playing your grandfather or somebody else's grandfather, it just doesn't matter. What matters is what you do with the information. So a lot of the things that we get we get information and then we interpret that information, and how we interpret it is what our reality is. So we may get information and interpret it in any number of different ways, and it really doesn't matter so much how we interpret it. It's just different. It's just different. Now the value of the information, that's important. So if our misinterpretation, destroys value, then that's significant. But if our misinterpretation doesn't destroy value, like it wouldn't if you had a talk with some entity who said he was your grandfather and you wonder whether he really was or not, or what you did in a past life or that sort of thing, it really doesn't matter. But the value would come in the information received. So partly you don't get clarity because clarity isn't significant.
Do you have a follow-up from that, Armand?
No, yeah, I think I got the question answered. It was just like in PMR, it seems so subtle, things that you almost don't know if it's a nudge or not, or it's something want to tell you something. But in non-physical, it's so clear communication with other entities. It was just, does it need to be like that? Is it a thing that you can develop or perhaps be more open to? Is it a technique thing or more a rule set thing?
Well, it's more of a constraints on the larger consciousness system sort of thing. In this physical reality, the nudge that you get has to be, has to have plausible deniability. Let's put it that way. In other words, it can't, it shouldn't break the rules here. So the system has to be more subtle. It has to nudge you in ways that could be explained as, oh, you just your imagination, or maybe I just made that up, or I saw something like that in a movie. So there has to always be some potential way that you could explain it without anything paranormal happening. So that way the system stays in the background. The nudges have to be subtle and not be obviously paranormal. Where you're out of body, then that's not the case. When you're in other kind of, if you're in a different environment rather than this physical environment, then that's not the case. Then pretty much anything can happen there. But again, you have to realize that what you experience is your interpretation of what happened, not necessarily what happened or why it happened. It's just your interpretation of it, which always means there's some uncertainty about it. So you stop really nagging at it. Is this exactly the truth? Is this, did my grandfather really do that? All of that kind of nagging at the, digging at the, what's the truth of it? eventually you just give all that up. It doesn't matter. What can you learn from it? Subtle, not subtle things. You get clues, you get signs, you get things that convince you that reality is a lot more interesting, deeper, and broader than you thought. You'll get those kinds of things just to help you take a step. But none of it is somebody telling you what to do or how to do it. Armand, this is the way it is. Here's reality. Because that's not helpful. That's all intellectual. That's all in your head, and it may help you act differently, but it won't help you be differently. So subtle is the name of the game. You have to find the opportunity, grasp that opportunity, and change yourself.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Armand. Tom,
Very
if you could,
helpful. Thank you.
thank you. Nathan, please go ahead with your question.
Thanks, Donna. Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good day. Really, this was an unexpected surprise to gather here like this. So I'm really delighted to be here. Tom, I'll read my question so it's kept brief. Thank you for always being willing to meet with us to answer our questions. I've taken seriously the journaling of my dreams. It's been an amazing insight into my authenticity. Sometimes there are dream situations where I don't interact in a low entropy way. I'm sensing there is some opportunity here. I've learned it's easier for me to work on things in my meditations through interaction versus self inquiry. Perhaps it's because I'm more right brain. In any case, I was thinking of entering the situations in my dreams in meditation and going slowly with the situation, exploring what's happening around me and in me, interacting, trying to learn about myself through experimentation in the dreams. Would you have any suggestions for me and others like me who have begun remembering their dreams more consistently and want to use their dreams in their meditations and are more interactive based in their learning or more right brain? Thank you.
I think being interactive is a key, Nathan. You have to be interactive. Learning and growing up is interactive. If you sit by and more passively just watch things or see things, you won't learn nearly as much as if you are interactive. You have to connect. You have to make choices. It's not, that's when people meditate and they want to go out of body, I tell them, interact with everything, anything, even things that seem silly, interact with them because nothing is going to happen until you put forth the effort to go connect, get something. So many of us think that growing up is it's like reading a book. Well, I'll read a how-to book, how to grow up, and then I'll be grown up. But it doesn't work that way. Again, that's we watch TV and we're passive. We see movies and we're passive. We're sitting in a seat and all this action happens in front of us, and we think we're learning things from that. Oh, I watched this wonderful movie and I learned something from it. Well, all that's intellectual. It's not until you get out and interact that it begins to soak in to the being level. It's through that interaction and connection that that makes it really valuable as far as your own personal growth. Otherwise, it's just an intellectual thing. So yes, being interactive with everything, your dreams, your friends, your life, your job, your neighbors, being interactive, that's where the rubber meets the road. Interaction is full of choices. How do I interact? Do I say this? Do I do that? Do I not say that? Do I act this other way? Do I argue with this person? Do I not? What do I do? Well, all those choices are part of your growing up. So yes, interacting within your dreams is a good thing. Dream space is another learning space. Imaginary space is another learning space. Imagination is a very powerful tool. This physical reality is another learning space. The out of body reality is another learning space. And in all of those, The idea isn't to observe, but it's to interact, make choices. And what's valuable about that is that if you're in all those different spaces, you get different choices. So because you can be interactive in, 3 or 4 different, interactive environments, 3 or 4 different reality frames, you get 3 or 4 totally different sets of choices to, to deal with. So that's the good part. You'll learn things from interacting in dreams that you probably won't learn by interacting, with people here. You'll see patterns. You'll see things that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise, because the dreams can be so extreme. Dreams can be a lot more extreme and a lot more dramatic than what is likely to happen here. So it's all places in which you can operate your consciousness, places where you should interact, connect, make choices, learn, and by practicing making better choices, grow. Dreams are a great place. But if all we do is note them, forget about them, and go on, then they don't teach us very much. If you start journaling them and inspecting them and get interactive with them, then now you've turned it into a space where you can learn something. So sure, but that same thing that's true of dreams is true of everything, every reality frame in which you can operate.
Thank you, Tom. It totally resonates with my experience with participating in your immersive program, and that's one of the first lessons you're teaching folks who are in that. And I hope people do the audio immersive program. I don't feel shy about plugging that out loud. It's an amazing program. I've benefited so much. I think it's so valuable. And I've thought that same thing when I took seriously the practices that you were teaching us about interacting. And I thought to myself, oh, this is like I'm learning how to do like a skill that's applicable to the rest of my life, like outside of meditation. Like I have to be engaged with my life, interact, explore, ask questions, care, like make choices of something. I think I've been a big passive participant of my life, and so thank you for, your work and inspiring that in many of us to like get engaged, and I think it is time for me to start doing that more with my dreams, because I never remembered my dreams until I took seriously journaling them. And if I can remember them, anyone can. So I encourage people to do that as well if they're feeling called to it, because I would tell people I never remember my dreams. And now I'm having many dreams every night usually, but I've been struggling to find what the value is beyond my own authenticity. Like I've been seeing it as a window into who I truly am, and that's been big value. But I was sensing there's something more now. Like if I'm going to keep seeing them, what do I do now with them? So this has been really helpful to kind of take it to the next stage. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, there's another thing going on too, and that is if you're passive, then there's really not much that the larger system can do to help you out, to help you grow, if you're just passive. But now we'll take your dreams. It's true of all realities, but we'll take your dream just as an example. You know, you don't learn much from your dreams, like I say, if they just happen and then you forget them or you don't pay any attention to them, then it's not a big learning space for you. But if you do start paying attention to them, now the larger conscious system can start engaging you in that dream space in ways that help you learn, giving you choices that are just the choices that you need to work on. And you see, you give the system another space in which it can be helpful to you, work with you, do things that are helpful to you. Whereas if you pay no attention to it at all, then that's one less space, one kind of potential learning space that's turned off, or at least turned down to the point that it's not effective. So every time you engage a different reality frame, be it out of body, be it because you're meditating, you're doing dreams, you're in this reality, the system can work with you to help you learn, have the experiences that you need to have. but only if you're interactive, paying attention, and trying to learn. In as much as you kind of let life go by and you're a passive experiencer of your own life, and there's not that much opportunity for the system to help you. So the more you interact, the more the system is able to be of service and be of help.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there's no problem plugging Exploring Consciousness on the Soundwise platform. It is a very valuable program. I think, if I must say so, it was put together well to help someone develop these things that Tom always talks about. And it's a good springboard to Tom's Park as well. There's several versions of that, including audio. Carolyn, you're next.
Hello, Tom. So my question today was about a problem that I've been struggling with for like basically all my life. I was diagnosed with ADHD, which is like attention deficit disorder, which I think in MBT terms we could also call it very right-brained. And I've been working with it the past years very much, and it's getting better slowly, but I feel like I'm reaching my limits when it comes to like just really trying to discipline and force myself to focus or meditate. And I got some, not just that, it also has to do with a lot of fear. And I've been also trying to do some fear work around that and approach it from that side. But yeah, I would just like to have some, I think I need some change of attitude or perspective on it to really make progress with it. So I just wanted to hear your take on it.
Well, ADHD, attention deficit disorder, and being right-brained aren't really associated. You can have you could be your mind flitting around from space to space to space, which is really what ADHD is. You have a hard time focusing, concentrating, and staying focused on a particular thing for a very long period of time. Your attention is constantly flitting from thing to thing to thing. You're distracted easily. That's what ADHD is. And you can be left-brained and right-brained, either one, and have that problem. That problem is sometimes organic, a physiological problem. But more often than not, it's a problem of consciousness. So there's two different aspects to it. It can be the brain chemistry that you need to focus, isn't there or isn't working for you. So you're kind of loose. But I don't think that's the major problem. I think mostly it's a consciousness problem. And that consciousness problem is basically somebody who is unsure, someone who is not confident, someone who is frightened. And because of that, they have trouble focusing. They have trouble just being in one space. They need that. They're constantly in flux, constantly in a state of change, constantly in a state of try this, try that, try the other thing. Am I too high? Am I too low? Should I be here? Should I be there? And all of that has to do with being insecure, being not sure who you are, or whether you're doing things that are right or not right, and questioning yourself. Having an attention deficit can have multiple causes. And if the cause is biochemical, it's probably biochemical because it first was in consciousness. The mind leads and the body follows. So if you happen to not be very focused. Your attention jumps around. It's probably because of fears, insecurity, lack of feeling confident. You're kind of adrift, somebody that doesn't know which way to go or how to get there. So you try all sorts of different things and none of them seem to work because you don't really put enough focus on any of them to decide whether they work or not before you jump to the next thing. Now, if your consciousness is that way, eventually your body will modify itself, the biochemistry will modify itself to support that, to show that. So the biochemical ADHD is often a result of a problem in consciousness first. Now, that doesn't have to be that way. It may just be, the randomness that's in biology. But I think most people, that's the problem. They are too anxious, I guess would be the word to say. Anxiety is a kind of fear. And when you have anxiety, you tend to jump around and not focus for too long because the anxiety builds. And when it builds, you have to do something. So you change whatever it is you were doing, you change it. And then the anxiety builds, so you have to change. And that anxiety could be around being insecure, fear of failure, fear of not knowing, not being competent, fear of not being loved or cared for or liked, just all sorts of things. The fear can come from probably hundreds of different colors and flavors, but the result is one of having trouble focusing. Becoming authentic, learning who you are, and accepting that. Just, this is who I am, and that's okay. I can grow from here. I can change from here. But when you don't really know who you are and you can't really accept who you are because you're not even sure what that is or who it is or how it should be, then you tend to jump around a lot and not be very focused. So now I don't know if that kind of gives you a different perspective on the problem, but being authentic is the first step, just getting to know yourself and that you are who you are and you're okay. You're good. You have potential. You have potential. You're okay. You can grow to be anything you want. You can pretty much do whatever you want. It's just a matter of what do you want? And, how are you going to get there? With an idea that getting there may take a year or 10, but that's okay. You have focus and you can spend a decade getting someplace. So it's a settling down and just accepting yourself as who you are and then working with that and not feeling like you have to fix everything all at once. Just pick one thing and try to get that done. And don't pick the hardest thing. Pick an easier thing. So in some way that you are flitting from thing to thing and not really focused, are you running away from things? Do you not want to make choices because you're afraid they're wrong choices? It's a fear of being wrong, fear of making mistakes, fear of not being able to make good choices. So you don't make any choices at all. You just flip from thing to thing without making choices. So just get to know yourself and accept yourself however you are. Be at ease and be confident with that. One small thing and try to work on that. And then pick the next small thing and work on that. And eventually as you work on these things and succeed, your confidence will build and you will begin to have more, I don't know, personal power in the sense that you'll know who you are, you'll know where you're going, you'll know what you want. And then it'll be just a matter of developing yourself to do that, be able to, do and be who you want. But it's not a quick process. There's no thing that says, take this pill and that'll fix you, or, do this meditation and within weeks, you'll be better. It's a long-term thing that you have to work on. And just progress is very slow. So pick simple things and stay focused on them for a while. Think about the fears that are causing you to defocus and go someplace else. Are you running away from things, running away from choices? Are you always pursuing something that you can't get because that's easy? If you know you can't get it, then you'll never fail because you've already decided that it won't work. So there's lots of strategies that people have for dealing with these sorts of things. I don't know exactly the strategy that would be best for you. You'll just have to find that by trial and error. But it can be fixed. Don't feel like it's just something that you've had for your lifetime and it's always going to be that way and there isn't anything you can do about it. You can change that. It's a change of attitude and a change of perspective. But first you have to have rid of the fear and have the courage to make that change. Because whenever you change anything that's about how you are, there'll be a part of you that will be afraid to make the change. What if this change turns out bad? What if it's worse than the way I am now? And then you tend to withdraw. So get a big picture, think about where you want to go, and just go there. Work toward it. Be how you have to be. Stay focused. And it'll just get better with time. You're young yet. You got a lot of possibilities and potential that's you haven't even begun to develop yet because you're still very young. So everybody feels like they're already done, and life is always going to be this way. But most people have many, many, many years yet left to grow and to change and to become and evolve. So it doesn't have to be a quick process, but you do have to have a sense that you can do it, that it's possible. Because if you don't have that sense, then you won't do it because you'll always come up with a reason for avoiding it. So have a sense of, I can do this. I can be the way I want to be. And then just realize it's a slow process. Don't be negative towards yourself for not being everything that you want to be. See yourself as a work in progress, and you're still at the beginning.
Thank you very much, Tom. That was very helpful.
Carolyn, did you have any other question?
Well, if it's okay that it's related to primal man, primal woman.
Of course.
Yeah. I just wanted you to elaborate on how men and women grow differently, like learn and grow differently, and how in what dynamic we can support each other by doing that, kind of like when you talk about that we match like a puzzle piece.
All right, I'll try to give a little bit of a bigger view on that. The reason we're so different is because our species 200,000 years ago was struggling to survive. And, there was another half dozen other, let's call them humanoid species. Neanderthal is just one. There was, I don't know all their names, but, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these. There were many others similar that were humanoid that didn't survive. Matter of fact, Homo sapien is the only one that did survive. All the rest of them became extinct. And Homo sapien would have become extinct as well. It was a close thing there for a long time, whether or not Homo sapien would become extinct. After all, we are not very fast. Our sense of smell is not very good. Our hearing is not all that good. Compared to our competition, we have a lot of disadvantages. Our reaction times are slow. We don't have many of the abilities that most other, say, vertebrates have. As far as their speed, their reaction times, their sight, their hearing, their sense of smell, all of those things weren't in our favor. The only thing that was in our favor was that we were clever, or at least had the potential to be clever. So, why did Homo sapiens succeed when the others failed? It's because we specialized, and we specialized by gender. So instead of everybody doing everything, females did female things and males did the male things. We split up the necessary things that had to be done. But all the things were necessary. If the females didn't do, the female things, then it wouldn't work. We would not have survived. If, the males didn't do the male things, we wouldn't have survived. So we split up to do different kinds of tasks. And because of that, our interaction with the environment became a lot more efficient. So that's basically why we have the differences between male and female within a species. And Homo sapien is at the top of the list as far as differences between male and female within the same species. Most species, and even within just our own, vertebrate, the male and the females aren't that different. Yes, there's usually a difference, a small difference in size, and maybe a small differences in attitudes. But in general, everybody kind of does the same things. Male and female do a lot of the very same things. Think of dogs and cats and horses and things. The females conceive and have the babies, but pretty much function in the same way and do the same kinds of things, interact with their environment in the same way. Okay, so humans are very, very different from each other. That's what caused the differences. It was our strategy for survival that we specialized and therefore became more efficient with interactions in our environment. And as long as that worked for us, it was like two puzzle pieces that fit together perfectly. Neither one could really survive very well without the other doing their part of the job. Both jobs were absolutely essential for the survival. So the two, male and female, just worked together to be more than either one would have been by themselves, and more than they would have been together if they both were mostly the same. So that was, evolution, and what works and what allows you to survive is relative to the environment that you're in at the time. Well, now the environment's very different. And that is the reason that we have all this dysfunction between genders. each gender not really appreciating the other because our environment's changed. And instincts and attitudes that developed over hundreds of thousands of years and served us very, very well have to change. We have to see them differently. But they're hardwired into our biology. So we have to be able to see the differences, move toward that phase of not only accepting but embracing the changes in our environment, because the changes have been good. This is a kinder, gentler place. It's not as physically challenging as it was. Survival is a lot easier than it was. We're not in danger of becoming extinct. We have 8 billion of us, running around on the planet. We're a dominant species. So all those things have changed, and we have to embrace those changes and move forward with a kinder, gentler environment. It's not like we should just pretend that nothing's changed and we should get right back in that same attitudes that we had before. But at the same time, we have to realize that our biology contains our instincts, and our instincts are centered in what helped us survive. And we have to realize that if we get crosswise with our instincts, it's going to make us feel wrong. It's going to make us feel inadequate. It's going to make us feel like we're not doing something right. We're not being who we should be, because our instincts say, this is how you need to be. This is your role. And if we get out of sync with that role, we get crosswise with it, then we start feeling wrong inside, failed, inadequate. And we don't know why. We just feel insecure, unsettled. And that generally ends up over a lifetime leading to depression and unhappiness. You see? So we have to deal with both. We have to embrace a kinder, gentler environment where most everybody can do most everything that's available in that environment. And the old dangers and risks aren't so big as they were before. But at the same time, we have to honor our instincts and not get crosswise with them. So see, we have to juggle both sets of things that are driving us. And we have to do that in a way that it's a win-win-win. That we satisfy all sides. We satisfy our instincts and we satisfy our interactions in a modern world. All of those have to work together. So we don't want to get into attitudes that are crosswise with our instincts. And we do want to pursue all the opportunities we have in a kinder, gentler environment. You see, so that's where we are right now, trying to make this transition, to where we can embrace all of that. So no, it doesn't mean that we should try to push down the instincts and move on, be something else, because we push down those instincts, it'll just make us crazy, make us neurotic, make us feel unhappy, make us eventually become, depressed. Because that instinct is in there saying, you need to be this way. And if you're not that way, that instinct will just, sit there and cause you problems, dysfunctions. You're not doing it right. And you're not doing it right at a very basic, fundamental level. It's disturbing. So that's kind of where we are. That's where a lot of the issues now that are gender issues between male and female, not seeing each other's points of view. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and we misunderstand each other. We have different, we interpret same data in very different ways. We have different needs. We have a whole different viewpoint on life and what it's all about, what creates happiness. and satisfaction. And we have to learn to appreciate each other in new ways. We have to honor our instincts and honor our new possibilities. So I don't know if that helps you put it in a context of where we are and what the problem is and the difficulties that we face. And how do we do that? Well, we do it and we can succeed at it. It sounds like it's an impossible thing. It's not an impossible thing at all. It's very possible to juggle both sets of things if we just allow it to happen. If we can just, be it. You can just be anything you want to be, anything you're qualified for. Go do it and be. But take your instincts along with you and honor them too. There's nothing that says those two have to be incompatible. The only viewpoint of incompatibility comes when you center in one of those and try to get rid of or force or manipulate the other. If you accept both, then there's really not a problem. So that is kind of our issue now in modern society, is how do we accept both and become both? How do we honor our instincts and also optimize life that's available to us and all of our opportunities? That is not impossible. And I guess the way that you have to do that is just to steadily make choices and work toward it. Track of your instincts. A lot of people don't even know they have instincts, or they don't know what they are. They think, oh, that's just, my evil twin, or they don't really get it, but they have to realize, we have instincts. We're like any other animal. When it comes to survival and procreation, we have very strong instincts. And you need to get in touch with those, which means you have to let go of the fear that allows you to get in touch with those and celebrate them and embrace them. And then learn to integrate that with a modern life and all the opportunities that it brings. So, not necessarily a trivial thing to do, but it's something that can be done. And it's kind of our job to do that. Now, unfortunately, we've gotten ourselves into kind of a negative attitude toward each other, males and females. And that's very destructive. We need a positive attitude. Instead of, having split and we have feminists over here and they are concerned with women's needs, and over here's men's groups and they're concerned with men's needs. We need to have people who are just people, and they're groups of people dealing with people's needs. In other words, if you deal with people's needs, then it becomes, how do we solve this together? Not, here's what I need, you need to change. And that's what males say to females, females say to males. You see, so we've gotten to the point we want to solve it from one side being right, the other side being wrong, or one side has to change and whatever. And that's a destructive way of looking at it. We need to look at it as we need to solve these problems together. So males and females, and in their relationships, what does a modern relationship between males and females look like? One that's successful, one where everybody's happy and the pieces to the puzzle do fit together perfectly. How does that work? Well, these are issues that males and females need to be working out, experimenting with, dealing with very positively, with respect for each other and caring for each other and understanding for each other's viewpoint. Then we can come to a solution. But as long as it's the men on this side, the women on that side, and there's competition and fear and good guys versus the bad guys. As long as you have that kind of attitude, then we just create more and more dysfunction and more trouble and problems for ourselves. And everybody's unhappy. That's a lose-lose paradigm where we kind of struggle to change the other to be more like us. That is a losing paradigm. Or even I know, let's both change and meet in the middle. Let's both become neuter. And then we can just live together as two neuter individuals. So if you change from male to neuter and you change from female to neuter, and then we'll live that way. Well, that's also everybody loses. We're not that way. That's contrary to our instincts. So we need to work together. And that'll only happen if we have positive attitudes toward each other. Males toward females, females toward males, a positive attitude. And we discuss and talk about what our needs and feelings are. Not in a sense of trying to justify them, but in a sense of just, here's what they are. Let's work with this. You see? So what we need most now for us to fit together like puzzle pieces again is a positive attitude where we can interact with caring and with love and with concern about other, not so much about self, to understand and grow. And if we can do that, then yes, men and women will begin to fit together again like piece parts, and they'll find out that using the natural ways that they are from their instincts, they can be much more effective and much more efficient at living and getting by and doing all the things they have to do in a modern society than they are if they're at odds with each other and struggling. That they need each other to be complete. They come in pairs. That's the way it is. So they need each other to be complete. So that's what we're about now in 2023. We're trying to figure this out. Unfortunately, we have bad attitudes. We have negative attitudes. We look at the opposite sex and wonder why they can't be more like us. Why they have to be different, because obviously in our mind, whatever's us is right and better. And however they are is not as good and needs to change. And that's just a self-centered viewpoint that continues to make things difficult. So instead of seeing things as men's rights, women's rights, and the two of them being in contest with each other, we see it men and women as a set that work together beautifully when everything's functioning properly. Do fit together like puzzle pieces. Each one contributes to a whole that's greater than it would be in any other form. So that's where we are. We're struggling with that, and there's the only way to get there is, choice by choice, just like everything else. Get rid of the self-centeredness. Care more about other. Understand other people's perspectives. Don't force your own perspective on others. And I'm right. My perspective is the right perspective, and anybody that disagrees with me, that's the wrong perspective. That's just self-centeredness. So all of that is a challenge to us. I think you should just look at it as, well, here we are with this issue, the male-female kind of connection in a very positive way. We're here, and the solution to it is growing up, getting rid of your self-centeredness, getting rid of your fears, thinking about other. So we're here in this kind of jam with negative attitudes toward each other, and the solution is grow up. Well, it's like solution to everything else. It's the same solution for everything. Get rid of your fear, love. And if you do that, then it'll all fall into place. So that's just one more set of tensions that's pushing us to grow up. Because right the way it is now, most everybody's unhappy.
Yeah, it does help a lot actually, because the more I've been contemplating on this and also working through my fears, it's been very interesting seeing things from primal perspective. And the main issue I'm having, this is why I'm asking about the dynamic, because you talk a lot about like care and empathy for each other, whereas like I sense that in myself and with a lot of other women around me is that we have this strong sense of like we want to take the lead now, right? Like for so much time throughout her history, men have been the leaders, and we felt like it was unjustified. So now we want to take that lead, and I do notice that pattern within me, that like I'm not having this patience and care, and I want to I have this tension and fear around it, and but also I'm struggling with also to communicate it with the culture, to learn from the culture, because to see that men are, that we can trust in the process and care, and also let men take the lead again, and like work towards low entropy together. It's like almost looked up down upon. So it's a thing that I'm still trying to figure out for myself. That's a bit challenging.
Well, the question isn't one of who's the leader. Everybody gets to lead. There are those things that the women should lead in. There are those things that the men might be better to lead in. There's things, and we talk about men and women, and that's a huge set of differences there. Women span a large set of differences. Not like all women are just the same and all men are just the same. So there's no problem. Instead of saying, I'm the leader in all things, or you're the leader in all things, that we lead when it's natural for us to lead, and we follow where it's natural for us to follow. And there's leaders and followers on both sides and both sexes all through life. And the thing is, if we learn where is it that our being the leader feels right and feels good, and where is it our being the follower feels right and feels good, well, as long as we care about each other, then all of that will work itself out. And it doesn't matter who does what. It doesn't matter who goes to work and who stays home with the children. It really won't matter. It'll be however it works out with those two people. All of that can be. So we have to get rid of all the defining hard rules. Well, these are the rules, and this is the way people have to act, and these are the way men are, and these are the way women are. People can be broader. They can be all sorts of ways. You just have to be in a relationship with caring and loving and giving to the relationship in ways that work. And that's just trial and error. See how it works. If both people are self-centered, there's going to be problems. So no matter what your attitudes are, if both people are self-centered and each person says my way, or, there's only two ways, my way and the wrong way. And if everybody concerned feels that way, then there's going to be problems. But when you let go of all the constraints, all the things that your culture tells you about how you're supposed to be or whatever, and just be who you are, that's when things start working good. And I guess you're struggling in a way right now, Caroline, to find out who you are. You have maybe conflicting things. You want to be this way, but you want to be that way. And the culture tells you one thing, and maybe your heart or your instincts tell you something else. And there isn't any easy way to work through that other than just try it. Say, okay, I'm gonna do this now. See how that works for me. Where does that take me? Is that better or worse? Oh, that's worse. Well, then let me stop doing that. Do something else. Is that better or worse? See where your feelings and your intuition takes you. There is no set thing, because there's probably no job, no situation, no set of conditions where both a man and a woman can't do well in them. So who does them then, and how do you work that out? And how is it that you and some guy that you're in a relationship with, how do you work those things out that you both feel good about what's going on? And if you're both not self-centered and giving, then that'll work itself out pretty quickly. If you do have self-centeredness, then it's going to be a struggle to get through that. So that's just, that's unavoidable. That's the way it is. And as you go through life and make choices, you'll see that some things feel more natural than other things. And those are the places where you should gravitate, rather than intellectually deciding, oh, I should become an executive of my own corporation. I should become a fireman or a policeman or an Indian chief or a lawyer. Or instead of intellectually coming up with what you think you want to be and then pursuing that, better to use your intuition. You are more right-brained. You have a lot of intuition. Move in those directions that feel natural to you, that feel good to you, and put aside the things that your culture tells you and puts into your intellect. The culture says, I should be this way. The culture says, I should be that way. You say, well, the culture says I should be independent. Well, if independent isn't what feels good to you, then discard what the culture says. Move in the way that feels good to you, that feels right for you, and try to let your intellect follow and let your intuition lead. And that would be good advice for the males as well. And do that in a relationship where you care more about the other person having their needs met than you even notice that you have needs. The other person's needs become more important than your own. That's what happens when you're no longer self-centered. When you're self-centered, your needs are more important than anything or anybody's. When you're not self-centered, other people's needs are more important than yours, because actually you really don't have any needs. When you're not self-centered, your needs almost disappear. There is no pat answer. Oh, if you do this and be this way, that's the solution. It's not like that. It's more complicated and more difficult than that. No prescription. So if you're thinking, what's the right thing for me to do? Well, there probably is no right thing that your intellect is going to come to for you to do. Don't depend on your intellect to get there. Use your intuition. Do what feels right and seems right to you. But always be aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if you think that you're doing it because of your self-centeredness or because of your fear, then be very skeptical of it. You're maybe only doing it because you think you should, or that's the way you should be. I should be in charge. Yeah, maybe. You should be in some circumstances and not in other circumstances. And there may be some of each kind of circumstance going on in your life all the time, where there's places that you definitely are better suited to be doing and ought to be in charge of, and other sets of circumstances where that's not so true. Well, you find out what those are and then divide them up where they belong, and now the puzzle pieces fit really good together. But you got to embrace those instincts and embrace all the possibilities that our environment now has, all at the same time. But it's easier than it thinks. It only sounds complicated if you try to approach the problem with your intellect. Then it sounds immensely complicated and there is no solution. But if you just feel your way through it, because there's not going to be an intellectual solution. If you feel your way through it, and intuit your way through it, you're likely to have more success. And let the intellect, sit down and be quiet for a while. The intellect thinks it has all the answers and needs to have all the answers, but it doesn't. It causes you more trouble, really, than good. It gets you thinking about what you ought to be, and opposed to what you are. And now you feel like you got to change from what you are to what you ought to be. But what you ought to be is an intellectual thing, probably taken mostly from your culture. And it's not really relevant. Discard the culture. Be who you are and what you are and how you fit in.